Story 1. Classic Moving Picture Experts Group 1 Audio Layer 3 players carry your whole music library without notifications interrupting you. Story 2. I love being able to access every movie ever made online, but part of me misses the experience of buying a movie on a video home system cassette or a digital versatile disc. Having only your own collection of movies made them feel more special. There were movies in the 1980s and 1990s that I wore out from playing them repeatedly. So many Christmas and birthday presents were video home system cassettes or digital versatile discs. Easy access to everything has devalued them. Story 3. Clicky keyboards on phones are a much better, faster, and more accurate typing experience than touchscreens. If a device like the Dell Venue Pro with a slide-out keyboard were released today, I would pay a lot of money for one. Story 4. The BlackBerry phone's raised keyboard is superior to typing on glass. Applications create clutter when the same tasks can be completed on a mobile-optimized web page. Story 5. Flipping open a Motorola Razr to hang up on someone felt different. Story 6. The answering machine. I remember that you could listen to people as they recorded their messages and even pick up the phone to answer in the middle of a message. Story 7. I miss being disconnected. A time when I did not have the world at my fingertips. Story 8. The Zune barely made a splash as an iPod competitor, but pressing its buttons felt good, and it had a perfect, mindless game played with its scroll wheel. I miss headphone jacks so much. Story 9. A landline phone. There is something so satisfying about slamming the receiver down. Ending a call on a smartphone just doesn't hit the same way. Story 10. PlayStation 2, Xbox 360. YouTube before artificial intelligence slop. Vehicles you could maintain or fix on your own with nothing more than a handful of basic tools and spare parts. Story 11. I miss the whole experience of going to Blockbuster Video on Friday night to rent a physical copy for 3 days. I know, but it is just such a nostalgic memory for me. Story 12. I miss my iPod Shuffle. It didn't have a screen. You just uploaded songs from your computer, and that's what you had to listen to. Story 13. Blowing into Nintendo cartridges. Nothing felt more powerful than believing your spit could fix technology. Story 14. iPods were pretty cool when you could actually download and keep your music all on one device. Additionally, the Game Boy Advance Special was a brilliant design and a huge improvement over all of its predecessors. Sadly, I never had one. Just give me one chance, please. Story 15. Those portable digital versatile disc players with screens still exist, but hardly anyone uses them anymore. Story 16. The only advantage of streaming movies over digital versatile discs is not having to get up to change discs. I dislike not really owning movies or shows anymore, and that wanting to watch niche films not available on streaming means hooking up my Blu-ray player again. Story 17. Old personal computer games were first distributed on compact discs and later on digital versatile discs. You bought what you wanted, and it was actually yours rather than merely a license to play until the servers were shut down. There were no microtransactions, and you were not constantly pressured to buy the next overpriced downloadable content pack that offered hardly anything. Okay, now I feel like an old man rambling about how everything used to be better. Story 18. Brick phones, also called dumb phones, coexisted with original YouTube and Reddit in the mid-2000s, which were exclusively on computers. Phone technology was limited to calls and texts, and things were simpler then. Story 19. We had a landline. There was only one phone in our house. Story 20. Nokia 1100, Nokia 6610, Nokia N72, and the Nokia E-series were some of the best phones ever made. The good old MPEG-1 audio layer 3 players did not require a subscription or frequent charging. Story 21. I miss car windows that roll up and down with a manual crank instead of power windows. Story 22. Plasma displays look the best, in my opinion, especially for video games. Story 23. I miss the Xbox 360 Music Visualizer. I am angry that Microsoft did not include it on newer generations. Story 24. Typewriters had a hands-on appeal. Typing on a piece of paper with an old-fashioned typewriter was tactile, with the clicks, the plings, and the feeling. Story 25. What is a piece of old technology you secretly miss, even though newer stuff is better? Message boards. Old versions of Microsoft Word. Story 26. Stick-shift cars are rare now, but you can still find them. Driving felt much more fun when you controlled the gear shifts, accelerating more quickly, passing other cars, and coasting. Hill hold made all the difference. Story 27. I had a mini-disc player for years, and it was great. If Sony had not been so tight-fisted with the patents, it probably would have remained popular for much longer. Story 28. Analog mixing consoles include the Midas XL4 and Midas Heritage, and Harrison and Gamble consoles as well. The convenience of DJI-Co and Avid S6L consoles is hard to beat, in my opinion. Story 29. Incandescent light bulbs provide a cozy, high-quality light. Although light-emitting diodes are superior on paper in almost every metric, most fall short of the light quality and warm feel of incandescent bulbs. Story 30. Manual cars. Yes, these days a good automatic is more efficient, offers higher performance, and is more reliable, but it is just not as engaging. I ended up with a Miata, but I fear that manual transmissions may no longer exist in the future. Story 31. My Fostex 4-track tape recorder. Sure, a computer digital audio workstation is better, but I am much more creative with the constraints. Story 32. The iOmega Zip and Jazz drives represented a major increase in storage capacity and a significant reduction in cost per byte. They were only relevant for a short time but were very neat. Story 33. Music stores where you could listen to albums before buying them, and music you could gift to someone in a physical format, whether a cassette tape, a compact disc, or a vinyl album. Pinball machines. Story 34. Minidisc was far superior to compact discs and offered the same storage capacity. It could have progressed to digital versatile disc or Blu-ray capacity. I still have my Sony Mini Discman and a couple of studio rack mount players. I will play an old mixtape from time to time and reminisce. Story 35. Having everything at your fingertips is great, but there was a certain wonder and excitement that built up when my parents drove me home from the shops and I pored over the manual for a new computer game, learning about its lore, the creator's thoughts, and the little quirks of the game before I ever got to play it. My clearest memory is Dune 2 on the Amiga. I still have the manual, and I loved studying the vehicle descriptions and imagining how to build them to counter enemy forces. Story 36. The PlayStation Vita was an impressive handheld device, but it was massively let down by the limited game library. It featured an organic light-emitting diode screen, strong performance, and long battery life. It was released in 2011. Story 37. Nintendo 64 games I enjoyed include Super Smash Bros., Gex 64 Enter the Gecko, Donkey Kong Country 64, World Wrestling Entertainment WrestleMania 64, Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, Mario Party, and Mario Kart. Nintendo 64 controllers are superior. I have a Nintendo 64 and I get games from eBay. I miss playing Hey You Pikachu and cursing that little bastard out. Story 38. Manual transmission. Yes, automatic transmissions are very mature and have better fuel economy. Electric vehicles are the future, and even hybrid vehicles cannot work with a manual transmission. But I really miss the days when I could feel that I had more control of the car. Story 39. I feel it was nicer when there was a clear distinction between recording video with a camcorder and taking photos with a camera. Story 40. Cassette tapes. There's something about spending the time to record a mixtape rather than simply clicking to add to a playlist. Story 41. I am not sure why, but I have always loved typewriters, especially older ones. Story 42. I do not miss much. I still have most of it in my collection. Story 43. A massive old desktop sat in the corner, and switching it on felt like a ceremony. Story 44. I loved lying in bed on Sunday morning, reading a massive print Sunday edition of a major United States newspaper. Story 45. Cassette tapes. Making mixtapes and recording songs from the radio. Story 46. Older phones did not require you to buy a new one every year. System updates now only work on newer models. Story 47. I miss the menu screen and extra features on digital versatile discs. I also like knowing that 10 years from now it will be safe from being remastered by a director, from modern audiences deeming it offensive, and from the best parts being cut out of online versions. Story 48. Clocks with numbers that flip. Analog clocks. Story 49. Razor flip phone. I would seriously pay for newer versions that run a limited set of apps and support 5th generation and 6th generation mobile service. Story 50. Bring back technology with physical haptics. I need buttons, levers, and knobs. Story 51. Dial-up modems and bulletin board systems. As a kid in the late 1980s and into the 1990s, logging on to bulletin board systems with my friends and playing games like Trade Wars 2002 was a lot of fun. Because a typical bulletin board system usually had one or sometimes two phone lines with modems, only one or two people could be on at a time, which created a scarcity that added to the excitement. Daily turn limits on games reset at midnight, so everyone tried to dial in at the same time to get their turns first. It was a wild, fun time. Story 52. I missed the smell of video home system tapes and going to Video Invasion, spending an hour just to rent Unico and Labyrinth for the millionth time. Story 53. I would miss my old iPod with a hard drive if I did not still use it more than 20 years later. Story 54. My old Toshiba laptop from college is the one I learned to code on and had modified to play Star Wars system sound effects. It was a sturdy unit that felt secure. If I had it back, brand new and working, I would use it as my main computer. Story 55. Photo negative enlargers. I missed the whole process. I never had the space for a darkroom and had to move to digital, which, for all its positives and creative opportunities, just does not have the same soul. Story 56. I have 3 Samsung flip phones in a drawer. I used one for calls and the other 2 to recharge the removable batteries. They cost about $13 each as prepaid phones and included a few minutes to get started. After activating them, they became unlocked after a year. Story 57. My lucky Gold Star Envy was a clamshell phone with a full keyboard and a second screen on the inside. That phone was excellent. I destroyed it when I set it on my leg at a Linkin Park concert and it fell into my beer. Story 58. My old insulin pumps had fewer bells and whistles, but they were significantly less hassle and less prone to issues. For example, batteries were easy. You simply swapped an old one and were ready to go for another week or two. Now they use only rechargeable batteries, and the battery lasts about 1 to 2 days at most. Story 59. Text on 9 keys, a predictive text system. I could write a book on my phone without looking at a touchscreen. Story 60. I owned a Hewlett-Packard 49G plus Gold graphing calculator, and earlier I had several Texas Instruments graphing calculators. I loved those devices. Story 61. Vending machines that physically put on a show for an affordable treat can range from very showy, like gumballs running in a parade, to plain, like a simple robot arm with a suction cup retrieving a product from a chest freezer. If you ever try one, it might cost around $15 for a hot dog or a cup of ice cream, and I have seen these machines fail, so I do not want to spend my entire fund budget and then have to chase a refund. Story 62. Not so secretly, I do love my mini disc player. It is a thoroughly obsolete piece of technology, but I think it looks cool. Story 63. I miss having a film camera. I used to own an excellent Canon camera that took amazing pictures if you knew how to use it. Sadly, it was stolen in a break-in a while back. Story 64. I'm going through an analog phase and playing records is my choice. You put one on, sit and just listen with no skipping and no multitasking. It does not sound better, but the experience is different and I really enjoy it. Story 65. I miss making mixtapes from radios with tape decks. Story 66. Dial-up internet. I miss connecting and disconnecting, not always being online. Opening Microsoft Network Messenger. Setting your Skype status to Skype me. Letting people know you are online and available to talk. When someone has a green dot in a chat app nowadays, does that mean they are bored at home and free to chat? Or that they just pulled their phone out to message a friend who is running late and is actually busy? 56 kilobits per second was fast enough for motion video with creative solutions. Now that we have ultra-high-definition video and so much bandwidth that no one cares about file size, the innovations that came from those low bandwidth times are gone. Story 67. I sometimes miss my old portable digital versatile disc player. I watched a lot of poor quality direct-to-digital versatile disc horror on it because I did not have cable, wireless internet, or money for movie tickets growing up. Story 68. My Windows Phone. Back then, universal devices were remote controls for life, offering the shortest possible interaction time with deeper integration of social services and filtering for important information. Today, devices and operating systems are built to steal your attention, promote web browsers, add glossy polish in every corner, and offer features that confuse rather than help you reach your goals quickly. Each app is designed to require longer interaction even for basic functions. Story 69. I miss my pocket-sized television. This was before television signals changed over to digital format. I was dirt poor, but I had a personal computer, dial-up internet, a World of Warcraft subscription, and a tiny desk television that sat next to my keyboard. It was a poor-quality little television that overheated and the colors were distorted, but I loved it. Story 70. Oh man, my old Motorola Q was a nearly indestructible phone. People talk about Nokia being tough, but that Motorola was tougher. I had one that was flattened by a car, and it still works. Story 71. Analog controls such as buttons and levers are far better than touchscreens for many applications. Story 72. Newer stuff is not always better. In my opinion, everything tends to be extremely overcomplicated these days. With newer technology, you have to download a program, install it, pay for a subscription, download and use the company app, create an account, set up authentication, and somehow it still does not work. 2 years later it breaks and you have to do it all over again. Older technology you can just plug in and it works for decades without problems. Story 73. Non-smart televisions with many inputs. I still have my old LG Electronics 42-inch liquid crystal display television from 2009. It just works. No software updates are needed. Story 74. Buying cassettes. I still make mixtapes for when I know I'll be doing something, but I miss being able to walk into a store and buy them with an official sleeve, a track list, and maybe even lyrics if you're lucky. Everything sounds too clean nowadays. Story 75. I had mini disc players, one in the car, a portable one, and one in the stereo. Story 76. Technology was harder to access and less central to our lives before we became addicted to staring at screens around the clock. Story 77. Cassette tapes. Making a mixtape for someone or receiving one is unlike anything else. The effort, the care, the simple inconvenience were so tangible, and after listening many times the sound itself would warp and decay. Beautifully imperfect technology. Story 78. Boomboxes. I used to have music playing nonstop in my room. Story 79. I love the old stuff. I recently got a digital video camcorder. I have a video cassette recorder, and I am currently looking for a small television from the late 1980s, so I can hook up the recorder, watch video home system tapes, and play my old Super Nintendo. Running the old equipment through a high-definition multimedia interface encoder does not feel right. I guess I am a weirdo. Story 80. All the various pocket-sized handheld gaming consoles, such as the Game Boy, the Nintendo DS, the Nintendo 3DS, the PlayStation Portable, and the PlayStation Vita, are effectively gone. Between smartphones and the Nintendo Switch, I think that era is officially dead. Story 81. Really simple syndication was once essential for news websites, allowing readers to view headlines from multiple news sources at a glance. Story 82. A cell phone with a radio. Mine was a Sony Walkman slider phone. I loved it. Story 83. I got rid of all my old stereo equipment when I was younger. I have some equipment now, but there are a few items I wish I still had. Story 84. I still miss BlackBerry phones, and I secretly think the BlackBerry 10 operating system is the best smartphone operating system. People miss the physical keyboards the most, and I do too, but I owned a BlackBerry Z10 and it was easily the best touchscreen phone I ever owned. The typing experience was far superior, and it is baffling that Android and the iPhone operating systems still have not matched what BlackBerry achieved. You could write entire books on that keyboard with ease. I have disliked typing on a touchscreen phone ever since I switched to an Android device. I tried different keyboards, and none matched the BlackBerry 10 experience. I especially miss the BlackBerry Hub on BlackBerry 10, where all communication was easy to access from one place. The whole system was clean and easy to use. It offered smart improvements that made sense, and anyone could get used to them after 10 minutes. Story 85. Video cassette recorder camcorders. My family had one while we lived in California and the rest of our relatives lived in New Mexico. They would ship it back and forth every few weeks, and it was our way of staying connected. We still occasionally look back at those videos of family events, and it is always a good time. Story 86. Non-voice over Internet Protocol landline phones had much better call quality, and my conversations with my dad did not sound like a ham radio exchange. I like having a phone in my pocket, but I miss how clear they were. I know call quality was poor in some places and that very long cord was a hassle, but generally it was easier to talk on the phone. Also, the handset fit against your face instead of making my cell phone screen damp. Story 87. The newer stuff is not better. Typewriters do not distract you with ads or software update nonsense, allowing your creativity to flow. Electronic organizers did their job better and more easily than any phone app. I am looking for one in a second-hand shop. Melway street directories find locations more quickly and do not obscure street names to promote businesses I do not need. They also do not mislead me about the shortest walking route by omitting small footpaths, such as a 5-meter path that connects a back street to a main road. Paper books are truly owned, and digital versatile discs and Blu-ray discs represent movies with a clear, non-misleading notion of ownership. They cannot be taken away from you if a company loses the rights. They do not require you to let strangers monitor your reading progress or to be targeted with irrelevant advertising. Standalone computer programs are also better than web-connected subscription services, which often cost many times more and can lock you into economic dependence by using file formats that only work while your subscription is active and that fail during an internet outage. Story 88. Okay. I'll admit I miss the letter opener. I never used it except for opening bills. It has an eagle on the top. It sits with a bunch of number 2 pencils in an empty tomato can. Emails, texting, and apps are better, though. Story 89. I like old cars, especially those with pushrod engines. Although modern designs are more efficient and pollute less, I miss being able to fix my engine in the driveway with basic tools and minimal knowledge. Story 90. While getting news online is convenient, there is something relaxing about reading a newspaper. Story 91. I'm going to say something surprising to you all. I'm a baby boomer who has never owned a gaming setup and has barely played one, and I prefer my phone to the earlier devices you are discussing. The camera is as good as or better than my single lens. Reflex and digital single lens reflex cameras were. I take my classic rock music with me everywhere. I can play games on it far beyond my skill level. Even though I can type, swipe typing is much easier and faster. I can install any app anytime and anywhere I have. The signal. I grew up with landline phones. We had 8 houses on a party line and only one person from those houses could use the phone at a time, so I will take my private cell over that anytime. I used maps, atlases, and printed directions back in the day. Vehicle navigation connected to my car is much better. Those printed directions were fun when traveling by motorcycle. I could remember 3 turns and then I had to stop and laugh at the directions again. I will choose modern versions of these things every time. Story 92. Not a piece of old tech exactly, but I miss the old Instagram back when it was not commercial. Story 93. Portable Walkman with amplitude modulation and frequency modulation radio. It was easy and free. Today, if I want to listen to sports on the amplitude modulation band, I have to either find an application or pay for a subscription. Story 94. I still love driving a manual transmission. Admittedly, automatic transmissions are more convenient, and continuously variable transmissions are at least as good as manual gears, but the control a manual provides makes it worthwhile. It's like comparing takeout to homemade food. Manuals are cheaper and more satisfying, but also require more effort. Story 95. Analog gauge clusters in cars include the speedometer, tachometer, water temperature gauge, oil pressure gauge, voltmeter, and fuel gauge. Story 96. A good old-fashioned boombox is better than your tiny iPhone speaker or the cheap pocket-sized one you bought. Download free lossless audio codec files and use an auxiliary cable to connect to your boombox for the best of both worlds. Assuming your phone still has a headphone jack. Story 97. I miss wired headphones and earbuds so much. I know they still exist, but I cannot find any whose sound quality I like and that are comfortable. I was forced to switch to AirPods a couple of years ago, and I am not thrilled. If anyone has recommendations for wired earbuds, please let me know. Story 98. Cars need proper physical controls. Large touchscreens are useful for displaying information but are poor for controlling vehicle functions. Story 99. Small MPEG audio layer 3 players with a clip. I will not run with a phone attached to me. I have an old SanDisk Sansa Clip Sport, but the ones you could install Rockbox on were even better. I also miss a tactile text on 9 keys keyboard. Typing precisely without looking was awesome. Story 100. I had way more people to talk to on AOL Instant Messenger when that was a thing than I do through text messages now. Story 101. Compact disc drives were once standard in cars, computers, and game consoles. I miss being able to insert a physical disc. Story 102. A fountain pen. Using it, filling it with ink, cleaning it, and caring for it as a valued object. One pen can give you many years of service. And the smell of ink. Story 103. I'm not sure I agree with the assumption that newer things are better. There are many examples where newer things have been worse. This question feels like clickbait. Story 104. I loved the original iPod mini, especially the third-generation models. It was a novel piece of technology with a great form factor that always inspired a little awe. I am willing to defend this. A modernized version could succeed today. I use a large phone because I need the battery life and the bigger screen. I do not need such a bulky device when I walk, run, cycle, or work out. All I need is a small iPod and my wireless earbuds. Story 105. Two slightly related topics. How to refold a paper map in one go and how to fold a newspaper while reading on a crowded subway. Story 106. If the system administrator of the local bulletin board system from my hometown restored an archive of the site and made it available online only to the original users, I would pay $100 per month to log in, play Legend of the Red Dragon, and participate in the old message boards. Imagine social media limited to local users, without the hyperpolarized political discourse and influencer-driven decay of today's internet. It was glorious. Story 107. My old camera had a zoom lens and used film. I loved being able to flip through photo albums. Story 108. I miss the bookshelf audio system, a 3 to 5 disc compact disc player, cassette player, frequency modulation and amplitude modulation radio, 2 woofers, and 2 tweeters. It made listening an active experience instead of the background activity it is today. I would purposely pick an album or a mixed compact disc to play and just sit and jam to it. Story 109. Commodore 64 games were good times. I spent months mapping Bard's Tale on graph paper. I should have kept those maps. Story 110. Multi-track tape recorders. The new machines do not use tape and produce better sounding recordings. However, the manuals are extremely difficult to understand. Story 111. I had a 1954 Austin Healey 100-4 sports car. 2 seats, wire wheels with knockoff hubs, a windshield that folded back to reduce drag, electric overdrive on a 4-speed gearbox, a tonneau cover, and a soft top. It was loud, not very fast, with rough suspension and hard, uncomfortable seats. It was designed to race in the 24-hour Le Mans event. The 100 part of the name meant it could go over 100 miles per hour. Completely impractical, but I loved it all summer until the snow came. Definitely not a winter car. It was not a Mazda Miata toy sports car. It was wind in your face, a shake and rattle roar down the road, a head turner. I want it back. Not my old car, but the same year and model. Story 112. We have gone through 7 dishwashers and returned to hand washing. Story 113. I miss my Sony Mavic digital camera with the floppy disk slot. Story 114. I love cars with touchscreens, but I hate that there is no tactile feedback for adjustments made without looking. I have to take my eyes off the road. Story 115. Old school answering machines recorded messages on tape. You rewound the tape, saw the blinking light indicating a new message, and played it to listen. Story 116. I miscorded earbuds with magnetic backs. I could clip them around my neck instead of fumbling with a battery case that I have to carry, which is just one more thing to lose. Story 117. My old Camry had a simple, reliable engine, a manual transmission, and an analog dashboard and controls. You could do basic work on it yourself and adjust the climate controls or the radio by touch. Story 118. I remember those lollipops with a frequency modulation tuner. It was my first experience with bone conduction audio, and I thought it was the coolest thing, hearing music while biting the candy. Story 119. I miss watching whatever was on instead of having everything on demand. A lot of my favorite media was content I might not have given a chance. Society is being segmented into niche groups. There are no shared cultural touchstones like in the past. Story 120. Dumb TVs. My wife and I have an approximately 16-year-old 32-inch LCD Vizio. If I want to watch over-the-air television, I press the power button and there is no splash screen covered with ads or prompts to update this or that. It just works. If I want to watch streaming or online content, I use the Roku. Story 121. The card catalog. An early feeling of independence for a child. I still remember flipping through each card, looking for the book I wanted and feeling the satisfaction of walking directly to the correct shelf by myself. Story 122. There is something satisfying about a typewriter, whether mechanical or digital. A computer or smartphone is obviously a significant upgrade, though. Story 123. Oh, I have one more: Nokia phones. I never broke one of those. New screens crack if they slip off the arm of your couch onto a pillow, but you could back over a Nokia with a dump truck and it would be fine. Also, the walkie-talkie feature was fun. Story 124. Dial-up internet. Nothing humbles you faster than that screeching connection tone. Story 125. The yellow pages were much better than trying to find a business on Google today. The city's businesses were categorized, each with a small ad describing exactly what they do. Story 126. For mountain bikes, I loved the simplicity of friction shifters and cantilever brakes. With a small gear kit and basic tools, I could fix many issues on a ride. Story 127. I miss the Sega Dreamcast and Sega's presence in the console market. Nintendo needs a reality check from a direct competitor. Sony seems to be taking personal computer games and putting them on consoles. Story 128. My ZX Spectrum. Not so secretly either. The nostalgia bug bit me pretty hard. Story 129. Tube guitar amplifiers are widely available at most music stores, but many live bands now use amp modelers. I love and use them myself. A local band of older musicians brought very large half stacks to a venue that was way overkill. The amount of air pushed by the speakers was incredible. It was a feeling I hadn't felt in a long time. Story 130. Whether something is better is subjective, but I have been collecting compact discs recently. They cost about 1/3 as much as vinyl, and in my opinion streaming music is unethical because artists get paid almost nothing. Collecting compact discs is nostalgic and enjoyable for me, and the artists receive a real share of the sale. If you want to support the musicians you love, buy their music physically. Story 131. There have been times I have been tempted to skip the fancy word processors and use a linotype to write. It would be monstrously impractical, but there is something appealing about needing a gigantic, complicated machine to create text. Story 132. 1960s and 1970s cars were simple to work on, and parts were easy to find. Each brand had a unique style, and you could order them almost any way you wanted. The Chevelle was available as a two-door coupe, two-door hardtop, two-door convertible, four-door sedan, four-door hardtop, or a pickup, with at least 4 different engine options. It was wonderful. Story 133. I had a killer surround sound system, a receiver, front and rear speakers, and a booming subwoofer. I used to rent digital video discs and watch movies until the living room shook. All of this gear fit in my television cabinet. Now all content is streamed. My flat screen television did not fit in the cabinet, so it is long gone. Most of what I stream was not delivered in a format that worked with my receiver. Now I have a nice ultra-high-definition television and a cheap soundbar. Regular television is fine, but movies are not the same. Story 134. While it is not exactly fun, there is something swarthy and rugged about getting your distributor cap wet. Story 135. I appreciate how much more efficient and reliable newer, computer-controlled cars are, but I miss being able to work on my non-fuel injected cars and trucks without a computer. Story 136. I really liked my Trio, probably because it was my first truly practical multifunction device. Story 137. Flip phones. Would you rather receive more calls than texts and avoid doom scrolling? Story 138. I used my portable DVD player instead of music apps. There were no interruptions from ads every second or third song. The main concern was keeping the discs from getting scratched, which only required being careful with them. Story 139. Books are best experienced in print. An electronic reader is useful because you can carry a library with you, but a physical book just feels right. Electronic readers have an advantage mainly for novels. Textbooks, comics, and magazines are better in print than in digital versions. Story 140. Phones with the fingerprint scanner on the back, specifically the Pixel 4a and the Pixel 5. Story 141. Nokia 3000 series phones are very durable. If you drop one, the floor may be damaged while the phone remains fine. The battery lasts for days. Story 142. My second-generation BlackBerry was a bright beacon of hope in a dark, indestructible world of Nokia phones, showing that something more existed. Story 143. Window cranks and manual locks mean there is less that can break. When they do break, they are easier to repair. Story 144. I really miss manual transmissions in cars. It is not always realistic in today's traffic, but I would still appreciate having the option. Story 145. Rotary dial phones. There's something therapeutic about physically dialing someone's number and, at the end of the call, the jingle of the phone as you drop the handset back on. Story 146. I played Super Mario Bros. 3 at a retro arcade on an old square television with a bulbous glass screen. It had such a warmth to it. Story 147. Pretty much anything that falls under the "you will own nothing and like it" mantra. Story 148. Phones before wireless. Cell phones are obviously more efficient, safer, and more useful and so on. But there was something to be said about coming home and checking your messages. There was a freedom in being able to go anywhere without everyone looking down at their phones. When you went to the mall and hung out with friends, no one was on their phone. No phones in movie theaters. No phones when you were watching a movie with someone at home. While social exchange today happens more frequently than before, the past had a more socially intimate quality. You had to put in more effort. As Seinfeld said, you could slam them more easily when you were mad. Story 149. Indestructible flip phones that give a satisfying clack when you finish a call. Multiple days of battery life. Unique form factors with real personality. They did not all cost an arm and a leg. Story 150. Big old laptops were slow, loud, and heavy, but far more durable than modern laptops. They had many ports and upgrade slots and felt ideal. I wish manufacturers made laptops like that again. Story 151. A small flip phone that slips into a front pocket, lets you stay in touch, and does not constantly keep you online and unfocused. Story 152. Compact discs and compact disc players were preferred because the sound quality was better. Story 153. Washers and dryers with 2 settings and no electronic controls. Story 154. Dials and physical buttons for the controls in my car. Screw these touchscreens. My Buick has a giant screen on the dash that has no brightness settings and is blinding when driving in the dark. It is like having your phone permanently set to maximum brightness. It also has temperature controls that are touchscreens, but they are low on the dash behind the gear shift and full of touchscreen elements the size of the close button on Google Play ads. You literally have to pull over to change the temperature safely. This is just a god-awful design. Story 155. I know this isn't the question, but I love having a compact disc player in my car, especially on long drives when I can't always get Apple Music. Some friends miss theirs. Story 156. Old school telephones with a dial and a cord were in another room, so you could answer them at your convenience. I miss that. I feel ancient. Story 157. Phones with removable batteries, micro-secure digital card slots, and headphone jacks. Story 158. Those small, personal Sony cassette recorders with a tape inside that you would win to fast forward. You cannot get them now. Story 159. The compact disc offers high-quality audio and is a physical item you can own, touch, and view the artwork. Story 160. Mattel Electronic Football. Story 161. For some bizarre reason that I cannot justify, I miss plain old telephone service lines and modems. I do not miss long-distance charges, though. I still have some high-capacity server modems. Story 162. Video games from 2000 to 2010 hit a sweet spot. Most games were just a blast, even the television and movie tie-in games, and it was always fun to bring friends over to pick out a game from your bookshelf. The box art and the booklets that came with them were also really fun to have. I really miss the times when, as a kid before the internet took over, you had to invite friends over to play together. There was just something special about those nights. Story 163. Watching video home system tapes and trying to get the tracking right for 30 minutes never got old. Story 164. It was horrible, but there is a part of me that misses my Palm Pilot. Story 165. Rotary phones with cords. I liked not being reachable everywhere. I also miss slamming the phone down when I was mad. Story 166. Cathode ray tube televisions from the late 1990s and the mid-2000s are the best. Story 167. I miss the quality of the digital versatile disc era. Streaming introduces significant video and audio quality problems even on a good connection. Paramount Plus often malfunctions even when I have a 300 or more megabits per second download speed. Story 168. Buy Adobe products outright instead of paying a monthly subscription. Story 169. Any handheld gaming console from Game Boy Advance to Nintendo 3DS. While we have Chinese emulation consoles today and they are impressive, there is nothing quite like playing on Nintendo DS or PlayStation Portable. Moreover, the innovation required to compete with other companies led to many neat designs. Story 170. My Windows phone was a Nokia, so it was pretty bulletproof with an operating system that no one supported, but I liked that phone. Story 171. TiVo was an elegant device that unlocked television and brought everything under one roof. Season passes let shows build up for binge watching. I set up a query to record movies overnight, and each morning it was fun to see what TiVo had recorded during the night. Comfort shows such as Judge Judy would sit with a couple episodes ready to watch. It was easy to estimate how long to fast forward to skip commercials. Overall, it provided a very pleasant viewing experience. Story 172. I miss having a mechanical film camera. Not that it took better pictures or was easier to use, but you knew there were precise components inside that had been made with great care. You could feel the gears moving, clicking, and whirring when you took a picture and rewound the film. The shutter moved and all those intricate parts worked perfectly. It was like holding a piece of art in your hands. Story 173. Shitty flip phones with a keypad because I could text and drive without ever looking at my phone. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.